What is going on, everyone? And welcome back to another About Teams video. And today we're back with our NFL offseason kind of grade so far. Draft is over. Main free agent signings are off the board. Everyone's signed. OTAs are underway. So it's an exciting time in the NFL. We're finally in that summer where it's all speculation. Everyone thinks their team can go undefeated, win the whole thing. At least, that really optimism fans. No team has lost. It's an exciting time, and we're going to be previewing an exciting division. I think that a lot of people are excited to watch the AFC South. We're going to start with the top two teams from last year. The reigning AFC South champions and probably winners of this offseason, Houston Texans, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I guess I want to start with the Jaguars because the Jaguars were a team that 2022-2023 were the surprise team, hired Doug Peterson. Trevor Lawrence took that next step. They went, I believe, 9-8, red hot at the end of the year. Snuck into the playoffs, won a wild card game thriller against the Los Angeles Chargers, I believe it was, coming back from like 27-0. It was like an unheard of game. And then they took the Chiefs, all they could handle. I believe they lost in a very competitive, like 24-17 type of game. It was still very good football. So there was a lot of optimism coming into this past year for the Jaguars because I think people thought, and they were actually my dark horse Super Bowl pick heading into the year, even midseason. They were 8-3 before Trevor Lawrence suffered a high ankle sprain. Christian Kirk went down. They ended up missing the playoffs entirely, finishing 9-8 in a huge slump. Disappointing considering Calvin Ridley came back, kind of had a disappointing year despite getting 1,000 yards. Did not make the wide receiver one impact a lot of people expected from him. And now he's off to Tennessee. But what did the Jaguars do? The first thing was trade for Nick's favorite player, Mac Jones.
Yep. Let it be known that is not my favorite player.
Yeah. So that was the first move. And then obviously they lost Kevin Ridley, but their first real signing was Gabe Davis from Buffalo. I think to use him more as a deep threat. We obviously know the big plays he can provide. He also kind of has those games where he just doesn't catch a ball. Maybe Jackson will try and use him as a threat where he can, kind of somewhat still like be a threat, intermediate, short, just get him the ball, get a couple touches every game. Obviously he's not going to have, big plays every game because that's just not how the NFL works. They scheme up against you, but he 3-year deal. I think it was fairly reasonable. Solid wide receiver too for Buffalo. They also drafted Brian Thomas out of LSU first round. So they were quickly aggressive to get another weapon. So now they have a 3-headed monster, Brian Thomas from LSU, Christian Kirk coming back, who's one of the most underrated receivers, in my opinion. When he signed that contract 2 off seasons ago, a lot of people called it an overpay. When he got injured, it proved how valuable he was to that offense because it quickly fell apart for Jacksonville. And then Gabe Davis. So that's you lost Calvin Ridley, but you arguably gained more depth alone. So that'll be kind of an interesting spot. Obviously, you got Travis Etienne still back there. I believe they re-signed Josh Allen. Sure. That's a huge part to that defense. I still got some question marks. They lost Darius Williams to the LA Rams. He went back there. For me, Jacksonville is it depends. It really comes down to Trevor Lawrence. Is he truly that generational QB? He has, all that height. Second year probably met those expectations. I don't count the Urban Meyer year. But last year, we kind of, in some ways, it regressed, I felt like. And I'm not sure what it was. The offense just never seemed to fully click. So this is a big year for Trevor Lawrence. It's kind of make or break. If he takes that next step, Jacksonville could be in contention for the AFC South. But if he stays mediocre, I see a third place finish. Wouldn't surprise me if the Colts surpass them. overall, I thought it was like B minus, C plus work. I think they did all right, but just compared to what the Houston Texans did in their offseason here, I think they're guaranteed at best second place in this division in a wild card.
Yeah. I also said probably around C or C plus.
Yeah, C plus.
I don't think they did a whole lot to really take that next step. They signed Gabe Davis, who, yes, he's a solid receiver. Like, he has that, potential to have a big breakout game or two. They drafted Brian Thomas, who LSU guy, love him. But I mean, you just kind of re-sign guys. When your big offseason trade move is getting Mac Jones.
Does Mac Jones start week 1?
If Mac Jones steps on that field this year, that means the division's already out of play and they're giving up. Mac Jones should not step on that field, no matter what. Up 50 should not be on the football field.
All right, too much Mac hate. Mac.
That's too much hate. He just made me mad. But I think in my prediction, when we were doing predictions, I think I had Jaguars third. So
yeah,
I think I said Texans, Colts, Jags.
Titans.
So I think I want to stick with that because we saw how much Houston did this offseason to improve, and it didn't seem like Jacksonville really countered that, because I feel like if there was a team that is in place to compete with Houston, it's Jacksonville. They just didn't make the moves. They brought back 2 guys. But
one thing I will say, though, is for Jacksonville, obviously, maybe got more depth at wide receiver, lost the Calvin Ridley, though. But if you're Jacksonville, I think the front office may be taking an approach like this. The offense was never in rhythm all year, and they were still 8-3 when Trevor Lawrence got injured and Christian Kirk went down. So is Jacksonville looking like, hey, if we run this back, make a couple small tweaks, is this team going to win the 11, 12 games it was projected to be if no injuries happened? I think that's the gamble they're taking. I still don't like it. But, if I'm Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence takes that next step, this team could easily win the AFC South because he has all the talent, but it's just the piece around him. That offensive line still has some question marks. I believe they signed Mitch Morse, but I think they signed at least some offensive line depth, but it's still a lot of question marks there for me. The defense, I think they were really good in run, but struggled in the pass game, and losing Darius Williams, who had that, for whatever reason, he was a pick 6 wizard, could get a lot of interceptions, but also, a lot of question marks after that, and they lost him. So the secondary has a lot of things to be desired. Yeah, it's overall, I think the second, third place is where they'll finish, around 9 wins for me. Just because there's this one team, the AFC South, surprise team of the year last year, making it to the divisional round before losing the Baltimore Ravens, the Houston Texans, and CJ Stroud, such a beast his rookie year. Now they head in. Expectations are beyond belief. They are the team that's supposed to challenge the Kansas City Chiefs this year in the AFC. CJ Stroud, electric first year. Now you add Stephon Diggs in a trade. You signed Joe Mixon. You signed Danielle Hunter. They revamped this whole roster to quickly become one of the best rosters in the league. It's a huge credit to what D'Amico built his first year, and they're taking advantage, which they should, of CJ Stroud's rookie contract, because if he continues playing this way, who knows how much money he's going to make. And then that's when, roster construction becomes a problem. It's kind of like the same with San Francisco and Brock Purdy. So they're just taking advantage now while they can. I'm excited. I would give the Texans an A for what they did. They pretty much handled everything. They're pretty much a complete roster, I would say, up through down. I think this team is going to win. I would say maybe A minus. I don't know if anyone can ever have a perfect offseason like an A, but they did a lot of good things. I think they're second seed to me in the AFC, or the second best team.
Yeah, I would say A. I think perfect would be A+, but I was ready to give them an A. I think they had arguably the best offseason. There's maybe one or two teams that compete, but I think they probably did, roster building wise and planning for the future wise. They probably had the best offseason.
Yeah, I would go A- just because I didn't like them losing Blake Cashman. He was a really good piece for them. I know PFF isn't everything, but great overall run pass linebacker coverage. So they downgraded a little bit there. But, I mean, obviously getting Daniil Hunter to help the edge room with Will Anderson, that's going to be scary for teams.
I trust, D'Amico Ryans to kind of build up, he's being a former linebacker. I kind of trust him to build up that linebacking core. But yeah, you give CJ Stroud a guy like Stephon Diggs. I know you're not high on him, but Joe Mixon, I love Joe Mixon. Off the field issues, but that's separate. But I think that's a big pickup for them, just to give them that other level, because it kind of seemed like they were a pass heavy team last year. They did have Devin Singletary, who kind of broke out towards the end of the year, but
yeah, I know that was a big part for them.
It was really kind of a, if we stop CJ Stroud, we'll beat this team, and that's pretty much what happened in the playoffs. He didn't really do much, and so the Ravens kind of shut them down. But I think now they have levels to the offense. The one question mark I do have is still kind of their secondary. I was going through their off-season transactions, and they got Derek Stingley, who's incredible, but past him, their second guy might be Miles Bryant from the Pats, who, I know a lot of Patriots fans that are not Miles Bryant fans. So
that is the one question mark, the secondary. But like you said, with the linebacker, D'Amico just finds a way, whether it be zone, just to help utilize whatever is best for them. Will be very interesting to see. I've talked about before, it is a real thing sometimes. I just don't want I don't want to see it because he's a baller. CJ Stroud, could he be in for a sophomore slump? Now teams have a full offseason to game plan around his game. That's something to keep an eye on. How does he respond to the adjustments defenses make? Because teams talk a lot about week to week, and that sometimes does happen. You dial up a good game plan, but you can overcome it as a week-by-week basis. But a full offseason, they'll know his strengths, where he likes to scramble, what Houston's offensive tendencies are. So it's just, CJ Stroud has the talent to overcome these adjustments, but it is a real thing. I feel like Jalen Hurts last year was a great example of teams started to, kind of figure out what the Eagles were doing, help slow things down a little bit, and then they collapsed at the end of the year. So will be something to just keep an eye on. Houston's got all the talent, though. Second best roster in the AFC, or second best team, maybe the best roster. But there is one team, obviously. Gosh, I can't say their respect until they're dethroned. They're obviously the number one team. No matter who they have out there, if they have me and you as wide receivers, if they have Patrick Mahomes, they are still the best team with all due respect. But Houston, A+ or not A+, A- offseason. Very good stuff. Solid draft. Can't really complain much, but this division is exciting. You got CJ Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, all young QBs with a lot of promise. It's going to be a fun division to watch, and we'll talk about the AFC South probably tomorrow, the other two teams. But it's an exciting time. Anything else you want to add?
No. It's going to be tough to beat Houston's offseason. I think they're probably the highest grade I'm going to give.
Yeah, me too. So I'll probably go A if we're going highest grade. A's best, probably them. Very great trades, everything.
They made stop. Pretty much every move they needed to make. Yeah,
they're all in. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs. That's scary hours for cornerbacks. But with that being said, thank you for listening to our AFC South, Jacksonville Jaguars, Houston Texans offseason recap so far. And we'll catch you in the next vid.